One of the most iconic and ambitious engineering feats in human history is undoubtedly the Panama Canal. Stretching nearly 51 miles and connecting the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, this canal revolutionized global trade. It made shipping faster, cheaper, and significantly more efficient by eliminating the need to sail around the southern tip of South America. But while the canal has long been a symbol of innovation and progress, today it faces a crisis unlike any it has encountered before. The once smooth flow of ships has slowed to a crawl. Picture the kind of traffic jam you'd find on a city freeway during rush hour. But this one involves massive cargo ships, and instead of being stuck for hours, vessels are now waiting for weeks. The cause? A severe and persistent drought that has drastically lowered water levels in the canal's lifeblood, Gatun Lake. But this crisis doesn't just affect Panama. It's disrupting global trade, driving up shipping costs, delaying deliveries, and causing ripple effects in economies worldwide. And with climate change intensifying, there's no guarantee things will improve. Fortunately, or perhaps strategically, neighboring countries are rushing to take advantage of the situation, launching megaprojects to grab a slice of the canal's economic pie. In this video, we'll explore the full story, how we got here, what's happening now, and what the future might hold. The idea of building a canal across Central America dates back to the 16th century. But it wasn't until the 19th century that efforts to turn the idea into reality began in earnest. In 1879, construction started under a French-led project, but it quickly turned into a catastrophe. The original plan aimed to build a sea-level canal, but engineers underestimated the terrain and the devastating impact of tropical diseases. Malaria and yellow fever ran rampant, killing more than 20,000 workers. The $300 million project, twice its original budget, collapsed into bankruptcy. Then came the Americans. In 1904, they took over and launched a completely different approach, a lock-based system using artificial lakes at varying elevations. Gatun Lake, created by damming the Chagres River, became the heart of this system. It allowed ships to be lifted and lowered across the isthmus. Meanwhile, major efforts to combat mosquito-borne disease dramatically reduced the death toll. This time, the canal was completed successfully, at a cost of $400 million, and with the help of over 70,000 workers and 1,500 experts. When it officially opened in 1914, the Panama Canal became a cornerstone of global trade. The sea route from New York to San Francisco was nearly halved. Instead of navigating the treacherous waters around Cape Horn, ships now had a safe and quick shortcut. Around 14,000 ships passed through the canal each year, transporting over 280 million tons of cargo. That's about 5% of all global ocean freight. It's hard to overstate its importance. But now, over a century later, that success story is under threat. Starting in early 2023, Panama began experiencing one of the worst droughts in its history. By October, rainfall levels were 43% below average, the driest October since the 1950s. This drought severely affected Gatun Lake, whose water level is crucial to operating the canal's lock system. As water levels dropped, so did the canal's capacity. In December 2023, traffic plummeted. Where 36 to 48 ships once crossed the canal daily, only about 22 were making it through. Over 160 vessels sat waiting at anchor. The Panamanian government imposed strict passage limits and weight restrictions, only allowing lighter, smaller ships to use the canal. Heavier, fully loaded cargo vessels could no longer pass, as their lower drafts risked scraping the bottom in shallow waters. On January 1, 2024, Gatun Lake reached a record low for that time of year, 6 feet lower than it had been the year before. The implications were massive. Besides slowing global shipping, the drought also affected local residents. Panama City and Cologne, the country's two largest cities, faced water shortages, as the lake also supplies drinking water. This water crisis wasn't just due to a lack of rain. It was made worse by El Niño, a recurring climate pattern that warms ocean temperatures in the Pacific and alters global weather systems. El Niño tends to reduce rainfall in Central America, and under future climate models, it may grow stronger due to rising global temperatures. In other words, this may not be a one-time problem. It could be the new normal. To make matters worse, 2024 broke temperature records across the canal. Each day of the year saw the hottest surface water temperature ever recorded for that calendar date. Although some restrictions were later eased as conditions improved slightly, the overall trend remains worrying. So what are the options? One alternative is to reroute ships around South America, taking the long path around Cape Horn. But this route is far from ideal. It doubles travel time and adds risk. The waters near Cape Horn are some of the most dangerous in the world. Storms batter the region up to 30% of the time during winter, and floating icebergs pose serious hazards. Charles Darwin once said that a single glimpse of the coast could haunt a sailor for weeks with nightmares of shipwreck. Another option lies in the far north, the Arctic route through the Northwest Passage. As climate change melts sea ice, this route has become increasingly accessible. In 2013, a massive cargo ship called the Nordic Orion successfully sailed the Arctic route, something it couldn't have done through the Panama Canal due to its size. Since then, Chinese shipping giant COSCO has shown interest in making the route more regular. However, it's still risky. Multi-year ice can still block key passages or damage ships. Plus, the Arctic route remains slow, long, and logistically complex. So what about the canal itself? Could it be upgraded again? In fact, that already happened. Between 2006 and 2016, the Panama Canal underwent a massive expansion, costing $5.4 billion. Engineers built a new, larger lock system, dredged and deepened channels, and raised the maximum water level of Gatun Lake. The result? A doubling of the canal's capacity. The upgrade allowed much larger ships, carrying up to 14,000 containers, to pass through. Before the expansion, the limit was just 5,000 containers. This expansion paid off. Shipping from Asia to the U.S. East Coast became 5 days faster. Investors expected a 12% internal rate of return. But now, just a few years later, that success is in jeopardy because the one thing engineers can't control, rainfall, has become unreliable. That brings us to Mexico. Seeing an opportunity, Mexico is developing its own alternative, the interoceanic corridor. Rather than building a canal, this megaproject uses a railway to transport cargo across the Isthmus of Tehuantepec, about 180 miles wide, linking ports on the Pacific and Atlantic coasts. The idea is simple. Unload containers at one port, move them by train, and reload them on the other side. The estimated cost of this corridor is $7.5 billion, but it could handle up to 1.4 million containers annually, providing a reliable and weatherproof alternative to Panama. It could also help drive nearshoring, bringing manufacturing closer to the U.S. by making Mexico more attractive as a trade hub. However, it's not without challenges. The ports on both ends, Salina Cruz and Coatzacoalcos, are being upgraded, but may still struggle to handle the expected traffic. The project also faces criticism from environmental groups and indigenous communities who fear displacement and damage to local ecosystems. Despite the controversy, Mexico's interoceanic corridor is moving forward. And it's not alone. Countries across Latin America and even the United States are exploring ways to adapt to a world where the Panama Canal is no longer as dependable as it once was. In the end, the crisis facing the Panama Canal is a stark reminder that even the most impressive human achievements are vulnerable to nature's power. As climate change continues to alter rainfall patterns, raise temperatures, and shift ecosystems, our global infrastructure must adapt, or risk falling apart. The future of trade may no longer flow through a single canal. It may spread across railways, new shipping lanes, and alternative routes, changing the geography of commerce in ways we are only beginning to understand.